Hello, my name is Dr. Dan Wedding, and this is DrWedding VB23, Networking Basics, for beginners with little or no networking experience. Note, this video does not contain Visual Basic code. In order to understand and use the VB code in the next set of videos, you will need to understand the basics of how a computer network allows devices to communicate. Because everyone has different levels of understanding when it comes to networking, I split this video off. That way, you have the choice of watching the video or skipping it. This video will cover the following information. What is IPv4 and IPv6? What is a public IP address? What is a public DNS? What does a router do? What is a firewall? What is DHCP? What does a switch do? What is a local IP address? What is a subnet mask? What is a port? And what is the difference between UDP and TCP? If you already know these topics, you can jump directly to the next video where the VB code is covered. If you do not know or understand these topics, you should watch this video. This is an extremely simplified explanation of your network attached to the internet. This diagram will be broken down and each part explained. Again, this video is to give you a basic understanding of the terms used in the following videos. IP addresses. IP stands for Internet Protocol. This is how computers are located on the internet and on your local network. Every device on the internet has a unique address, similar to a phone number, so it can be accessed from anywhere in the world. There are two different IP addressing schemes. IPv4 is the older version. It is what most people think of when they think of an IP address. It has fewer addresses and is somewhat limited. However, it is very easy to understand and configure. IPv6 is the newer version. It has many more addresses and can be used to set up large networks without the fear of running out of addresses. However, most people find it difficult to understand. It can be argued IPv6 is better, but people are still sticking to IPv4. That is why I have been told that IPv6 is going to totally replace IPv4 in the next 6 months. And I have been told that for the past 10+ years. In this video, I will only cover the basics of IPv4. Maybe I will make an IPv6 version in the next 6 months. To access a device on the internet or a local network, it must have an IP address. An IPv4 address has the format shown below, where the XXX is a number between 0 and 255. An example of an IPv4 public IP address is shown below. Every device that is directly connected to the internet has a public IP address. The public IP address is unique, like your phone number. Public domain name server. Nobody wants to remember an IP address to get to a website. Instead, we give an IP address a nickname. The name and number are associated with each other and recorded in a public domain name server. A DNS is like the contact list in your phone. It associates an easily remembered name, such as Mom, to a number you never remember. That way, you can just tell your phone to call Mom, and it will call her. A DNS server does the same job. If I want to go to google.com, I type google.com into my browser, and a DNS server converts it to a number such as 142.250.191.142. Admit it, you don't know your mother's phone number, and if you lost your contact list, you would not be able to call her or anyone else ever again. Cable modem. There are many different pieces of equipment that are connected to the internet, and they all have a unique public IP address. To keep it simple, let's use your home as an example. There is a public IP address associated with the cable modem supplied by your internet service provider. The cable modem will convert a fiber optic signal or a coax signal into a signal on a copper wire. This signal is passed to your equipment. Local router. The router acts like a bridge between the public connection and your local network. The public side is called the Wide Area Network, WAN, and the local side is called the Local Area Network, LAN. The router can also act as a firewall. A firewall is like a bouncer at an exclusive club. If someone on the LAN side invites you in, you are allowed to enter. If you try to enter without an invitation, you will be blocked from entering. When working with VB, sometimes you need to tell the firewall that you are passing information back and forth, or the firewall will think it is someone trying to crash the party and block the data. All of the devices in your house have a unique local IP address. These local IP addresses do the same job as a public IP address. They allow the device to be accessed individually. It is the job of the Dynamic Host Configuration Protocol server to assign local IP addresses to the devices that want to join the network. Network switch. The router feeds a switch. The switch is a lot like an internet plug strip. It will take one connection from the router and fan it out into multiple plugs. These plugs are connected to your devices. The switch allows these devices to talk to each other as well as the router and the internet. Local IP addresses. If you do the math, you will quickly realize that there are more devices on the internet than unique IP addresses. To fix this problem, inside your house, each of your devices is assigned a local IP address. For almost all small networks, the IP addresses are 192.168.0.something. If you are wondering how so many people can have the same local IP address and still be unique on the internet, think of it like this. When you call a big company, you call their main phone number. Think of the main phone number like the public IP address. When you get through, the phone system will ask you to enter an extension. Think of the extension like the local IP address. There are a lot of people throughout the world with the phone extension 101. But there is only one person in the world at extension 101 who also works at Joe's House of Creepy Dolls Incorporated. There are two types of IP addresses, static and dynamic. A static IP address is when the device tells the network, I am this IP address and I will be this IP address forever. This can be useful for devices that are shared and always on the network, such as network printers or scanners. Think of a static IP address like the phone extension of a company's CEO. Because the CEO is important, his phone extension will never change, even if he moves to a new office. A dynamic IP address is when the DHCP tells the device joining the network, I just pulled this IP out of a fishbowl and you can use it for a while. Think of a dynamic IP address like a phone extension in a shared work area. When someone is in the workspace, they use that phone with that extension. When they leave and somebody else starts to use the workspace, that person will use the phone with that extension. The range of static numbers and the range of dynamic numbers do not and should not overlap. The ranges can be configured in the DHCP server. For example, in the DHCP server, you could set 192.168.0.51 through 192.168.0.254 to be in the dynamic range. The DHCP server will only pass out values in this range and it will make sure that there are no duplicate numbers. Because the DHCP was told it can only pass out numbers with a third value greater than 51, you are free to use 192.168.0.1 through 192.168.0.50 as your static IP range. It is important that you know what your dynamic range is. It is also important to know if any static IP addresses have already been used. This will prevent two devices from having the same IP address and causing a lot of headaches. Subnet masks. A very simplified definition of a subnet mask is a number that lets you increase or decrease the number of local IP addresses on your LAN. The group of IP addresses in the LAN are said to be in the same range. Only devices in the same range can directly talk to each other. For clarification, computers in different ranges can communicate with each other, but not directly. They need to communicate through a middleman, such as a router. For the purpose of this video, I'm trying to cover enough information for you to understand the VB code covered in the next two videos. For now, I'm just going to focus on the LAN in a typical home. When you start to connect computers to your LAN, there's a very strong possibility that the default local subnet mask is 255.255.255.0. The 255 in the first three positions means that the first three values must be the same for the two IP addresses to directly talk to each other. The 0 in the fourth position acts like a wild card and means that it can be any number. So 192.168.0.57 can directly talk to 192.168.0.66 because the first three values match. But 192.168.7.10 cannot directly talk to 192.168.0.15 because the first three values don't match. Adjusting the subnet mask to include or exclude more IP addresses is easy, but it is more than I want to cover in this video. Ports. A device, such as a computer, can be communicating with many different places over the network at the same time. To keep the communications separated, each communication path is assigned a port number. Each IP address has 65,536 ports it can use. For example, a computer with an IP address of 192.168.0.10 may be communicating with a website over the internet using port 80. The same computer with the IP address of 192.168.0.10 may be communicating with a mail server over the internet using port 587. The same computer with an IP address of 192.168.0.10 may be communicating with an online game server over the internet using port 7777. Each IP address has 65,536 ports attached to it, but you can't use them all. You can't use ports 1 through 1023. They are already in use to help maintain standard internet service. You should avoid using ports 1024 through 49,151 because they can be registered by large corporations. However, anyone can use ports 49,152 through 65,536. TCP/IP and UDP/IP. There are two main internet protocols used to communicate on the internet. They are UDP/IP and TCP/IP. UDP stands for User Datagram Protocol. UDP is like sending a letter using the United States Post Office. There is no tracking and no guarantees. You just drop the letter in the mailbox and hope for the best. TCP stands for Transmission Control Protocol. TCP is like sending a letter using a service such as FedEx, UPS, or some other carrier. There is continuous tracking, you know where the package is at all times, and there is confirmation of delivery. There are two very different protocols because they have different uses. UDP is very easy to set up, and because it does not need to keep reporting back to the sender, it is very quick. If you're using IP to transmit phone calls, voice over IP, called VoIP, or to play online games, speed is what you want. A slight wiggle in a word during a phone conversation, or a lost pixel on the screen is preferable to a multi-second delay. TCP is more complex to set up because it needs to keep track of everything. This makes it slower. If you're transmitting a bank transfer or a Bitcoin to someone, then reliability is what you want. A slight delay in the transfer is preferable to losing all the money in your bank account. The next videos in this series will open up a network connection and communicate with two other devices on the local network. The computer and both devices will have fixed local IP addresses. These fixed values are not in my DHCP range, but your IP addresses may be different. The port numbers will be in the 50,000 range to be safe. The computer and the two devices will be attached to the same switch. The specific settings I will be using are listed below. The next set of videos will have an explanation of the VB code, a link to a text copy of the VB code that you can download, a schematic of the boards that were used in the video, a parts list of the components used on the boards, a link to a text copy of the microcontroller code used in the example, including the code for an Arduino Metro Mini and the code for a PICAXE 28X2. If you find these videos useful, please like and subscribe. It is the only way I can continue to make these videos.